The way that we operate as a bootstrap company allows us to build a better product faster that allows us to have a sustainable business. And a sustainable business means when you have profit, you have a forever business. And I don't need to depend on a third party for the survival of my company.
Today, I have a special guest. She is a 3-time founder. She is also a female entrepreneur. And welcome, Melissa, to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Amazing. Well, I want to start maybe with a brief story in your own words about your journey founding three companies.
Yeah, that's a big question, I guess. So the last job that I quit was at SAP, was living in Vancouver at the time, 14 years ago. I was never a great employee. I think SAP was the largest company I'd ever worked for. And I just wanted to do something of my own. I didn't really think, I'm going to do a startup. I just wanted to do something by myself and not listen to a manager and have a 9-to-5 schedule. So, my first idea was like an events site. Like, I don't know why I came up with that, but that was what it was. Didn't really work out. I mean, I worked on it for not more than 4 or 5 months, I think. But after a lot of iterations, my first company was, in the real estate industry. So it was real estate tech. Previous to SAP, I was working in real estate for a long time. That company turned into an agency where, we wanted to build a product, but we were bootstrapped. So we said yes to a lot of things. And before you knew it, our product was custom to many different customers. So we just became an agency. So ran that for 5 years, was sick of running an agency. So that turned into my second company, which was the first SaaS product that I ever built. It was enterprise SaaS. It was an open house check-in product on an iPad. So walking into an open house, instead of writing your name on a piece of paper, we were the iPad version for that. But we sold it primarily to brokerages and franchises, like real estate brokerages and franchises. So ran that for 4 years before it was acquired in 2019. So eWebinar is my third company, and it solves a problem that I lived with in my last company, which was doing the same live webinar over and over again. So because we were always bootstrapped, I was the only one that was doing all the demos, training, onboarding for my enterprise customers. And at the peak, I would do 8 of them back to back. So all these were exactly the same. And it just seemed really inefficient that a founder would be doing them, or even a live person would be doing them. But there was no other way to train people, because if they didn't use the product, I didn't get the renewal. And the problem was, not only were these all these exactly the same, the attendance rate was also really low. So hundreds of people would sign up, but less than 20 people would actually show up. And I have sessions where everybody would drop off, but I would continue to do them because they would wait for the replay that came from the recording. So that was my life for many years. And I had always dreamt about this product that would deliver a video like a webinar without me having to be there. So I kind of dreamt this up for 5 years. And when my last company was acquired, I decided to solve this particular problem once and for all, which was doing the same webinar over and over again. And that's exactly what eWebinar is. I founded the company 2 months after my last company was acquired. So almost 5 years ago now. And the product's been live for 3.5 years. And we're just over $1.5 million in annual recurring revenue at this point.
Amazing. And congratulations, on starting the company so fast. I know the sort of the burnout or the pressure you have, right? And so you jumped right back in. So I would want to spend some time talking about that decision. But also, obviously hitting 1 million ARR is a special, or exceeding that milestone is a special milestone for sure. And the other piece I wanted to point out, Melissa, is I'm a big believer that the only way you get ideas is by being in the market, right? And so that's why, in a way, maybe it was even a pivot, right? If you didn't exit that maybe first business, you could have pivoted to this eWebinars business because you felt the pain, right, firsthand. And so it's great when you don't dream up problems just because you see trends, right? But you've actually lived that. So that's certainly very special as well. So if we go back to your early days, right, and maybe we can start from Spacio, given that it was a software product, and sort of how did you, sounds like you had experience in real estate, so you also observe that pain with the showings and how people check in. How did you start validating it? How quickly did you get to revenue? How did you test your product market fit?
For my last company?
Yeah, just starting from that or whatever you think.
I mean, way before SAP, like right after I graduated from university, I worked in real estate for developers. So I was sitting in a showroom where people would walk in. I'd, ask them to sign in a piece of paper, and then I would give them a brochure for the building. So I worked for new developments as a receptionist. That was my first job. But I also worked on the side as a real estate agent and apprenticed for more senior real estate agents. And on the weekends, I would sit at open houses and ask people to sign in. So on the weekdays, I would ask people to sign in at a building. And then on the weekends, I would ask people to sign in at a house. So I saw how many people intentionally wrote their name poorly, so you can't follow up with them. But at the same time, I saw how many opportunities were being lost because people could write with a piece of paper. Whereas when you're typing your name and your email, it's just your name and email. And when you're doing it on an iPad, there's also a level of privacy that you don't get on a piece of paper where you see everybody signing in. So when I went into tech, I knew that problem intimately well, but I still didn't know exactly what product it was to build. So I had a product in mind that was for open houses. It was really complicated. Like it had a consumer front, which was like where people would sign in on an iPad, but it also had the vendor front where it had a piece of hardware that you put at your open house so that when you walk into a house, you'd have an app on your phone. And then that, like it was just like super complicated. Like it wasn't just a sign in on an iPad. And I probably iterated for about 2.5 years before we actually removed 95% of features we had and started over again as just the sign-in form. I guess I was clouded by a judgment that a product needs to be cutting edge and needs to be cool and complicated. And I underestimated simplicity because I think, and everyone talks about innovation, but what is innovation, right? Innovation is changing the way someone does something forever. So going from paper to digital paper was something people understood. Going from paper to 5 moving parts was not something that people could understand. And it wasn't until I removed everything that people started to get what we were doing. And then over time, we added back in features that made sense based on, I guess, customer request, right? So just through that process of like trying to explain something so hard and people not really getting it, taught me that you need to start off with something very small. But that process took a lot of years and also burned a lot of money. And that was why back then, I'd say I was at the lowest point in my career because I really didn't know what I was doing. Because my first company was an agency, so I didn't know how to build a product. Like I thought that building a product was very similar to an agency, but an agency is building something somebody wants and getting paid for it right away. Right? It's no different than like building a website and someone paying you for that website. Whereas building a product for everybody, you need everyone to agree that that's the product that they're going to pay for. And it's a very different process. So I learned the hard way. But that's why it made eWebinar, I guess, so much easier this time around.
Understood. Well, lots to unpack, and thank you for the transparency of that painful experience. And whomever is listening and an early stage founder, I think it's a usual trap, right, to overbuild because you see you want to build the best solution. You know how, many things it takes to actually fully solve the problem the way you see it, right? But I think that brings us back to this idea of MVP. What is that most painful and explainable part, right, of what you're actually solving? And I think, Melissa, if we go back to sort of that early process, was it because you just skipped customer development or you did it in a way that now you understand was faulty in some way? So can we learn from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I learned in my first 2 startups was that I thought good businesses had to be things that didn't exist, or what we call blue ocean opportunities, right? Because when I was trying to tell my friends or people at meetups or pitch VCs about it, whatever idea I had, right? The first thing they would say is, well, doesn't that exist? So I thought as a new founder that good ideas had to be things that didn't exist. So instead of trying to answer that question and showing my thought process, I was trying to change my ideas to something that didn't exist, right? So my first two companies were blue ocean opportunities. And I didn't know back then that convincing someone to pay for something that doesn't currently exist on their budget was going to be exponentially harder. And that was something I learned after I sold Spacio, because a friend of mine who I would consider the best second mover I've ever met said to me, your previous companies were hard because you're trying to convince someone to buy something that they didn't purchase in the past. And that was kind of a light bulb moment for me. And he was like, when you build something that already exists, you can learn from your competitors and make it 10 times better. And they're already buying it. So convincing someone to buy a better CRM is going to be way easier than getting them to switch to a CRM from, a paper Rolodex. So it really changed the way I see business. And so eWebinar is not something that didn't exist before us. There were things that existed. I tried to use it before. I know all the faults in it. And I know that the automated webinar solution that existed before us, I know why they sucked. And I know where we could be better, because the reason why I didn't use them was because they didn't fill my need. So what I did coming into eWebinar was capture, a purple ocean opportunity, which is really taking a business model that already exists and applying it to a different vertical, right? So that sometimes is also called horizontal expansion. So we basically just took something that existed, we make it exponentially better, and then we applied it to, small, medium-sized companies, whereas solutions that existed before us were only really made for independent marketers that were, selling courses or, that were, trying to sell a single product, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely makes sense. And I think the interesting maybe transition here is to your now experience with eWebinar, where you had the opportunity to learn from all your scars and lessons of the past. And how did your customer development process look like in a webinar? Given that you felt the pain, you already sort of felt like you were an expert. Did you actually go through that customer development process, and what did it look like?
I don't believe in asking customers for feedback too much, right? So I remember listening to a traction podcast that where Lloyd Lobo was interviewing Keith Roybus, like one of the most celebrated entrepreneurs of our time, and he equated it to like a movie producer, right? A movie producer is going to make that movie and then market it because that person knows that there's a market for that movie. Like he or she is not going to go and interview a bunch of people and say, should I make this movie? So I believe in that approach to business. The thing is, I know that automated webinars exist. I know that there's a problem because I've been in business already for 10 years. I know a lot of tech companies and also a lot of non-tech companies in real estate who have this problem of doing the same webinar over and over for training and onboarding and also for demos, right? In sales and marketing. I didn't really need to survey the market because something already exists. And I also remember watching a documentary that Jack Ma made from Alibaba. In the very early days, he was the eBay for China. And I remember he said on the movie, like on the documentary, he said, I don't need to prove that a market exists. I only have to prove how big the market is because eBay already proved that the market exists. So I took the same approach where for 1.5 years, when we were building eWebinar, we built it in a silo. Some of my friends knew what I was building, but I didn't want anybody's feedback to cloud my own judgment because I already lived with this problem for 5 years. And I knew that I was going to build this product differently. While it was solving the same pain, I was going to have features that solved my particular problem. So I knew that if I got more feedback, that I would be more confused. And I didn't want that. I wanted to get this to market as soon as possible. So I only showed people through kind of a demo like on Zoom about 2 weeks before we were ready to sign up customers, what we were doing. And the way that I got our first 100 customers was I just made a list of everybody I knew. I just went through my phone, went through my emails, made a list of everybody I knew that I thought could use this product. And I got on a call with them to tell them what I was doing next. I asked them if they thought their company could use it. And if they said yes, I would set up a separate call as an onboarding call to watch them sign up and watch them create their first webinar. And that's how we got feedback for the first version of the product. And then anytime at the end of that, I would ask them for referrals who they thought could use this as well. And that's how I exhausted the first and second degree contacts.
That's a great point of view. And it certainly takes guts to say, I know exactly what I'm building, right? And I think in your case, it worked out because you had that front seat to actually experiencing the problem. The question I have for you is a lot of people now are building in public, right? And so they think about building that community even before they build a product, right? Is that something that you considered? Was it not a fit for sort of how you didn't want to cloud your judgment? Or do you think in hindsight that would have been a great lever for you to have once you actually went to market?
I mean, I think building an audience is great. Building a community is great for marketing your product, right? But I think if you want feedback, right, you should know as a founder that if you ask 10 people for feedback, they'll give you 15 different pieces of advice. So I actually think one of the hardest things as a founder is to differentiate what is good advice and what is advice that you're just going to ignore. Right? Like, especially VCs and other founders, we can't help it but give you advice. Like, we want to solve problems, right? But you are the only person that is thinking about this day in and day out. Other people will give you advice and then just leave, right? And go and live their lives and not even remember that
they
you
have
asked them for
nothing
advice.
at stake. Yeah.
They have nothing at stake, right? So I think having a community and building in public is great to rally people behind you and to support you on whatever project you're doing and hopefully become your customers. But if you want real feedback, ask people to pay you for your product or service. And they will tell you all the reasons why they won't pay for it. That is the best feedback you can ever have. Beta customers, alpha customers, your friends will not give you real feedback, right? Because there's nothing to lose if your friend tells you it's bad. They're always going to say it's good. Right? Your friend's feedbacker is always more skewed, right? And also if you put beta users that are supposed to critique your product in a room where they're supposed to critique your product, that's what they're going to do. But if you ask people to pay you because because you want to deliver value, they're going to tell you all the different ways to fix your product and why it's not delivering value for them. So that's the approach that I've always taken, which is why I don't believe in building minimal viable products. I believe in building minimal sellable products, which is why, with eWebinar, I think we took an extra 6 months probably to build everything with its bells and whistles. Because I spent years selling to companies and I know what companies are going to pay for. And everybody that came on board knew that they had a trial period and that they were going to pay if they wanted to continue using the product. And that's how they were evaluating it from the very first day.
I definitely resonate with a form of commitment when you're asking for feedback, right? And I think I learned it firsthand when I was solving a family engagement problem in education and I interviewed 100 parents. They all said, oh my God, communication from school is horrible. We are 100% behind it. Then we rolled out a product and there were crickets. None of them actually took it. And they were even my friends or friends of friends, right? They did nothing. It wasn't a matter of money in that case, but it was a power struggle, right? Parents didn't feel confident and empowered to actually go to their teachers and school leaders to say, hey, this is the product I would want you to use to communicate with me and other parents, right? So there are so many factors, price, right, decision-making, power, etc., right, that are at stake that you just can't measure before someone has to actually take a commitment, whether it's, introduction or payment or something that's very concrete, as you say. So.
Yeah, I remember Leah Theron from Product Tea. She, she's big in PLG as well, has her own podcast. She told me that she had this PLG course and she surveyed her prospects why they didn't sign up. And if they would sign up if she lowered the price, or maybe it was like people said they would sign up if they lowered the price. And out of something like 100 people, when she lowered the price, like 2 people signed up, or like something ridiculous like that.
Because it's a question about your future behavior, which has no precedence and no commitment, right? No strings attached. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. I mean, I think like I've been in a fortunate position because I'm a sales driven founder. I've always been in sales, and I've been a profit revenue driven founder. So when I think about creating features and prioritizing, I'm also thinking about how do I use it in my sales pitch. And that's why I tell founders, like, if you don't know how to sell, you should learn how to sell. And sales is a science, right? Once you know how to sell, you can position your product in a way that people are going to pay for it. And you also start to think about your roadmap and your features differently. So I think I had that advantage. But even for founders that don't have it, it doesn't mean they can't learn it and think about how to prioritize what you put out first in a way where it generates value for companies right away.
Yeah, that's a great point about sellable features, right? And something that's easy to communicate its value, right? You can have some magic things happening in the back end, but if you cannot clearly articulate the value to the customers, it certainly doesn't make your pitch or your value proposition stronger. And so I wanted to go back to what you said about sort of different persona. I think you used the term horizontal expansion, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk more about that, and how did you think about sort of what prioritize in that process of horizontal expansion?
Yeah, I guess so I was referring to it as, we found a business model that existed already in the marketplace, and we applied the same business model to a different audience, right? So before us, there were evergreen webinar solutions out there, but they were made very much for individual consultants, marketers that were selling products, right? Like, and we wanted, because my own use case was customer success, because I personally was trying to train real estate agents in the companies that I closed how to use my product. So I was using, Zoom or GoToWebinar to deliver these live webinars for training and onboarding specifically. The products that were on the market were not used for that. So the features that they had built were not geared towards, customer success training and onboarding. So that was the first use case we started with. It doesn't mean that customers that are using other products wouldn't come over. It just means that we weren't focusing on them, right? So our messaging wasn't focused on them, or our features weren't really focused on them, right? In fact, the existing solutions were kind of scammy, right? They were actually made to trick people into thinking a webinar is live when it's not. So what does that mean? So other solutions had like fake attendee counters. They had, fake chat where you could load in a fake conversation that made it look like it was happening now to create false scarcity so you could buy now instead of later. We purposely did not include those features because it never sat well with me. I don't want to trick people, right? I don't want people coming into my experience and think the last time they were in a webinar, they were tricked into buying something. Knowing that we were not going to win customers over from other solutions that needed that, right? But we wanted to build a solution with integrity, and we didn't want to be recognized as like this little scammy solution. So I would say even now, every week we have people that don't convert because we don't have a feature that has a fake counter, fake scarcity, fake chat. But we're resolved with that solution, right? You can't build one thing that makes everybody happy. Even now, right? People are like, why don't you have this? Why don't you have this? Well, you know what? Like we can only do things one way because our solution is not customized. And either people say, well, I can't sign up because you don't have this, or I'm going to live within my means, right? So I think as a founder, like especially when you don't have profitability, you try to be something for everyone. But the thing is, if you're something for everyone, you're nothing for anyone. So we took evergreen webinars that already existed and we applied it to customer success first, right? And then afterwards, as we got more sales and marketing customers, we started to build more features that was also geared towards sales and marketing customers, but we never compromised on our principle of not tricking people, right? So we really stuck with building a product with integrity. But even now, like I know that because our solution is so good, if we went right now to build our product to attract more customers that are using those other solutions, we would be able to win more revenue. But it's just not a space that we want to play in, right? Because that category of users are also more cost sensitive. They also have a higher likelihood of churning. So what we want to focus on is small, medium enterprises that have, revenue that will expand their usage way beyond selling a single product. So we have customers that are automating 50 to 100 different types of webinars every single month. And those guys are paying us $2,000 to $3,000 a month, right? Whereas if we focus on a very, very narrow marketing audience, maybe they will only ever sit at $100 to $200 a month. So that's the direction we're not going.
Yeah. And Melissa, I'm a perfect use case for this because I had a funnel with webinars when we were starting out with teachers, and I specifically scouted the market to find a way to automate it. And I hated the idea that I'm tricked with these counters and fake chats and the webinar that starts in 20 minutes. Because I know perfectly well that on Sunday at, 7 a.m., it's not starting in 20 minutes, but still that's what I'm told. And so I actually never automated the webinar for that exact reason, because I just didn't feel that it was authentic to do that. So I can personally on the values level resonate with that. And talking about sort of profit versus revenue, right? And you are famous now with really bootstrapped intrapreneur and sort of articulating that it's a valuable choice for others or a possible choice to build businesses. You've proven it with your own example. So how did that sort of change your approach, especially in the early days of being a bootstrap business and profit-focused business first?
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference between revenue and profit is revenue is not profit, right? Profit is what is left over after, subtracting your burn. So I think VC funded companies are revenue driven because a lot of times they have growth rates to hit in order to raise the next round, whereas bootstrap companies have to be profit driven because otherwise you don't exist, right? And I think as a bootstrap company, it's not enough just to be revenue driven. You have to constantly optimize your burn. And that, I think, is the core of how we make every decision, right? Is like everything that we spend on, whether it's a product or a service or a person, we always think, do we need this right now? Is this the right time to invest in this? Is this the best person? Is that the highest ROI person that we can bring onto our team? Right? I think a big misconception is bootstrap companies are cheap, but they're not cheap. Cheap means always paying the least, right? I think bootstrap companies focus on getting the highest ROI, which means paying, the least for the highest return on the dollar. We only hire senior people because they are most productive. They hit the ground running. They don't need to be micromanaged, and they complete the task fastest with the highest quality, right? Every time we hire someone that is convenient or is junior, they end up leaving very quickly because maybe we don't have the right environment for them, because maybe younger people want to be in real life and we're fully remote, or they take a long time to complete something, or if they complete something, we have to check it, 10 times before it comes out. So then we're actually taking time away from ourselves, which is, in turn really frustrating. So I think being profit driven changes every decision that we make because it's the core of how we make every decision. But not just with people in service, right? It's also with every single feature we spend time on is we ask ourselves, can we make more money from this? And making more money doesn't always come in terms of monetary value, right? It's, can this help activate someone faster, right? Can this help keep them on board longer? Will this help them expand the usage of their account? And therefore help us, either get more revenue or expand the account or help them not churn, right? So I think profit and optimizing burn is really at the core of every decision that we make. Very different than just can we make more money? Because if we just wanted to make more money, we would just dump money into ads without caring about how much we actually, profit from it. But we don't have that luxury. But the thing is, I don't want to, because I think the way that we operate as a bootstrap company allows us to build a better product faster that allows us to have a sustainable business. And a sustainable business means when you have profit, you have a forever business. And I don't need to depend on a third party for the survival of my company.
So does that mean that you don't do paid advertising? Or it means that
we don't do any paid advertising?
You don't do it. And you haven't
zero.
tested it to see if it's higher ROI?
We've tested like a few $100 here and there. We've paid ad consultants, 2,000-3,000 retainer for a few months to try. Like the biggest problem is we do not have product market fit. We do not have product messaging fit. And we are not in a mature product category. So we are not a scroll stopper. So what does that mean, right? We are not a CRM that people understand. We are not an LMS system that people understand. They're not searching for us, right? Automated webinars, evergreen webinars, call it whatever you want, is fairly greenfield. So you're not going to understand what it is unless you already know what it is. So it still takes a conversation and a demo to fully understand the value that we can create. And that's what we learned from dumping money into ads is we're not stopping people from scrolling, and people don't fully get what we're doing. And we are also not able to spend enough money to make those campaigns even remotely meaningful. Right? I think every ad consultant says, well, you can test messaging and you can test this with a few $100. Like I cannot be converted to believing that now, right? Just also like seeing how little ROI like other people, like my friends, are getting from advertisement versus spending time creating content, like whether it's being on this podcast or writing content, writing blogs, focusing on SEO and creating content that lives forever on the internet versus, dumping money into ads for a specific moment in time. I think it's not that we're never going to revisit it, but I have to know when we do revisit it, that we are in a mature product category, that we have a name that's recognizable, that people are going to know exactly what we do right away. And we need product messaging fit, which we are still in the process of figuring out right now.
Thank you, Melissa, again, for your openness, right? I think there are a few founders out there who would just volunteer to say we don't have product market fit. So it takes guts for sure to say that. And I think from everything you've accomplished, your bar for product market fit might be higher than other people. So I wonder, how do you measure that? Do you run product market fit kind of surveys with your customers? Do you look at retention? What prompts you to say that you don't have product market fit?
What prompts me to say that is every day I still have people coming into my demo and asking, what exactly is this? They're in my demo and they don't get what this is. Right? So they know they have the problem. They're problem aware. They're searching for a solution to that problem, but they don't fully understand what we do. And that actually blows my mind because they understand fully what a Zoom does, but they don't understand what a Zoom is if the live video is a recorded video. And that's how little imagination consumers have, right? Most people are not that smart. So I'm sure that when the first CRM came out, nobody knew what it was. And then over time, it became the mature product that it is. I am sure that when like live broadcasts came out, right? Live calls came out on, GoToWebinar, whoever was the first, right? People didn't understand why they had to do that and not just call somebody on the phone, right? So I think every product in their early stages kind of went through this early majority kind of adoption curve, right? I think we're still there. And I don't know what product market fit is. I've never experienced product market fit, right? I've only heard about it, but I imagine it's someone searching for a problem and understanding that you are the solution. And all they need to make a decision on is who to buy from. And we're not there, right? People come to us, they have an education curve. They have to understand what we do. And then they go and do their research. And then they decide whether we are the vendor. They're not coming to us deciding on a vendor. Like some people are, but some people are not. And until everybody is, I don't think that's product market fit. And sometimes your product is too early for the market. PayPal was not PayPal to begin with. PayPal was a peer-to-peer payment platform for Palm Pilots. But then not everybody had a Palm Pilot. But then people were using eBay and not knowing how to pay the other person. And then they became the payment gateway for eBay or that type of a product, right? So that's kind of how I see where we are is you can have an amazing product, but you cannot dictate how ready the market is. And I hope that when people switch from live to automated, I believe it's inevitable, right? I'm making that bet, right? The same analogy that I see is back then, people wanted to watch TV, right, on live network. I'm going to watch my favorite show Thursday at 7, and I'm going to set an alarm for it, and then I'm going to talk about it with my friends the next day. And now we can't even imagine not watching a show on Netflix or Apple TV. Like we would never catch a show unless it's a game, right, or New Year's Countdown on live broadcast. And that's the shift that I see from like live demos, live onboarding and training to automated, because why does it have to be live? Like so few things in our life have to be live. And as people value their time more now than ever, and as we operate more and more in an asynchronous world, I believe that's inevitable, but I don't know. I just hope that if the market shifts there, then we are eons ahead of any competitor that's going to come out.
Yeah. And I love how you make sort of broader parallels with human behavior, because at the end of the day, it's the same trends, right? It's the same humans, going from watching shows on their terms on Netflix to the behavior parallels that you are betting on, right? And I think that certainly seems like a reasonable bet, and we are excited to see that shift for you. And so you made some specific lifestyle choices, right? So you moved from New York to Thailand. I think you were a nomad for a while. So how did that sort of shift your perspective of the business? Are you now really focused on US market or broader global market? Sort of how did that lifestyle change shift your perception of building a business and geographies?
I mean, it doesn't, right? I think the world is flat. In fact, my first company was named Flat World Applications, and customers are everywhere. And I don't believe that a product or your team can be bounded by geography, right? We hire people based on skills and passion, right? We are a fully outsourced company. We don't have any employees. Everybody's a contractor. And that model allows our company to exist because we can't compete with talent in the West. Like not even possible, right? We would be burning 3 to 4 times what we're burning right now. And so I think we're marketing to anybody that was going to pay us. And primarily English speakers, right? Because all of our content is written in English. But we have, I forgot what the service is, but our website is translated automatically to like 5 other languages, like Spanish, French, Arabic, and I think like one other, whatever is popular. And so I do think we're in a global market. I don't think you have to live in the US to market to the US. Because I did live in the US and Canada, and a lot of my friends have companies in the US and Canada, and I think the US is where they spend the most money. That just happened to be where, we started in the first place. But I never think about business as like limited to geography in my last business, it was in real estate. So it was very regionalized. But because I had that lesson, when I wasn't doing well, we couldn't grow our business beyond the US and beyond any industry. One of my non-negotiables coming into this company was I needed a product that could be sold across industries, across geographies and across industries that were not bounded by language either. So I specifically look for an idea that I guess was flatter than my last one. But yeah, I don't really think about business as that limiting. And I think where I am physically doesn't really make a difference because I don't take any calls either.
That's a great perspective. And I think something that's holding many founders back, right? And especially when there is no limitation from a software solution perspective, right? They might have a great solution for a problem of a particular industry or type of customer, and they say sitting in, I don't know, Poland or France or Brazil and whatnot. And I think that is just a psychological barrier that exists. And so thank you for being in Thailand and serving the global market, including US. And I actually, Melissa, did want to come back to product market fit for a moment. To me, I love talking about product market fit, and it's I think, favorite topic for me. And as a recovery management consultant of 12 years before going into being a founder, I certainly spend a lot of time in research. But the way I would qualify what you have is you do have a product fit, but not the messaging fit, right? And I think that's actually what's happening here, because from what I understand, the customers that you have strong retention, expansion, and they show all the signs of a great product stickiness, right? And satisfaction with that. But I think that's the messaging piece. So I would be more gentle with with where you're at. No messaging fit, but product fit.
Yeah, we actually hired Anthony Perry he specializes in homepages. He also writes on LinkedIn pretty often, to rewrite our homepage. And then based on the language that he extracted, we rewrote everything else. So it took about 10 months last year to go through this kind of website revamping project. And previous to that, we had the same version 1 website for 2 years. And the website that we had didn't even match what we were selling. We didn't have feature pages. It was super simple. It didn't show any product shots. So we actually just rolled out our new website about a month ago. And to your point, we are trying new language that was extracted by an expert. And I'm actually going through the process of using that language on my own profile and rewriting all that on LinkedIn and Twitter to see if it actually makes a difference. But I think we do have the products to solve the problem, but you're right. It's just, how are we presenting this problem in the shortest amount of time, right? Because our patience is so short now to people that are coming through, whether it's my social profile or whether it's the website.
Absolutely. And I'm glad to watch that journey. And I don't know if you have side by side of these web pages. Might be interesting to for a topic for another post for you once you see the results and the comparison of what it does to the product.
Yeah, we're measuring the results now, so I hope it works, but let's see.
Fantastic. Well, I wanted to close off, Melissa, with advice you give to female founders or founders in general, and if that advice would be different.
That's a good question. I think that's too broad of a question. So the thing is, I'm one of the worst people to ask these questions to, because I never see myself disadvantaged. Understanding that there could be some disadvantages, I don't see myself as disadvantaged. But I'm also not a fair comparison, because I work remote. I work mostly alone. I've crafted it that way. But if I were to think about, if you think about, how do you build a company? Is it different male versus female? I don't really think so. I think the general principles still apply. But I will say that when I was attending conferences and more, because of my last company, I had to do that. I had to do a lot of in real life things, because we were selling enterprise SaaS, right? Every product every contract was 10,000 to 100,000. So that kind of software was sold face to face, and events and conferences in a very male dominated industry. And if I were to think back at some of the things I wish I had the confidence to do, and mind you, I'm 40 right now, and back then I was, 32, right? So things that I would say are more female oriented were, I wish I had the confidence to speak up at the time when I felt like I was being taken advantage of as a woman. And I wish I educated, I guess, my peers a bit more to recognize when that happened. like now I'm a lot more vocal about it, right? So I'll give you an example. There were clients that I were trying to close, like big accounts that I was trying to close, where, maybe a man would say things to me that I felt like were inappropriate. Not on the company email, but specifically got me on my text, like on the phone, and said those things that were inappropriate. And because I was afraid to lose the deal, instead of calling out that behavior, I kind of just let it slide. And thinking about it now that I'm older, I wish I had the confidence to be like, you know what? I don't actually need that deal. And this behavior, I need to be reporting as inappropriate. And that's, I guess, the advice. If I were to give advice to a female entrepreneur or any executive right now, that's the advice I would give, is like not to be afraid to call out that behavior at the moment it happens, right? And always, like, if you are experiencing that kind of behavior, always make sure there's a paper trail and report it when there's an opportunity, because you're also saving someone else the pain of needing to do that later.
Thank you, Melissa. And I think it's interesting that immediately when I asked female founder versus male founder, you went to saying you didn't feel disadvantaged by being female in general, right? And I think that sort of, I feel exactly the same way, right? I always thought, I'm a founder. I have an idea. I'm building a business. I'm not putting any labels on me, right? I'm on a mission, and I have the gender and ethnicity, whatever that I've got. And, I'm going to do the best I can, right? And not victimizing sort of how, I feel. But it's certainly, I think, indicative of some of the general tone that we are hearing, right, about sort of victimization.
But I think we normalize a lot of stuff too, right? Like, I'm not blind to the fact that I don't catch a lot of things, right? You only know what your experience allows you to know. Right. I don't know if I've been disadvantaged. I've just never looked at myself that way. Maybe I was, I don't know. Right. Exactly. But I definitely don't wear that on my sleeve because it is not productive.
Right. Exactly. It just doesn't, I always felt like it doesn't serve me. I know that it perhaps was harder to raise for me than from a male counterpart. Numbers suggest that. But
you did it.
Right, but I did. And it didn't serve me to think, oh my God, I'm not going to raise because I'm a female founder. I'm going to raise and that's it. I'm female and, it's not something I plan to change. So I think that's, a true inspiration to speak up and to just own what you've got, right? And, attach the beliefs that serve you, and to build a better life and better world. So, Melissa, where can folks find you? I know you have your own podcast. You're active on social media, so please share.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to connect with me is through LinkedIn. My last name is spelled Kwan, Kwan. So Melissa Kwan. I write 2 to 3 times a week on my experience bootstrapping 3 companies. And if you're curious about eWebinar and how it can help you in your business, come to our website, eWebinar.com, spelled exactly as it sounds, eWebinar.com. There's a demo there that I manage as well. And if you're curious about my podcast, the new season is actually about our journey to $1 million. So every episode we actually talk about, like, it's just myself and my COO. We talk about something we did that worked, that didn't work on our journey to $1 million. And that podcast is called Profit Led. And that's one word. But yeah, looking forward to connecting with you guys. And if you have any questions, just send me a message.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much.